Well, before he heads back to Washington then, Trump first is to have dinner with Macron tonight at the Palace of Versailles. It is an unusual gesture by a French leader. The other leaders are not invited, and the Élysée Palace has been briefing that this meal, though, while opulent, will not be a gala dinner. With more on that, here's France 24's Caroline Baum.
France's most famous castle is closed as it prepares to host Donald Trump. With a wide-reaching security perimeter around the Versailles castle and no parking allowed, Wednesday night's extravagant dinner has become the talk of the town. Many Versailles locals are skeptical of using the symbol of French opulence to win over the US president.
I can't understand how we could invite a person like that who has no business being here.
It would make sense if he were a real peacemaker.
Strategically, I think choosing Versailles is smart.
Starting at 7:15 p.m. local time, the American president is set to visit the Hall of Mirrors. He will then attend a short concert in the Royal Chapel before heading to the glitzy dinner. The splendor of the Sun King seems fitting for a president known for his penchant for all things gold. At the G7 meeting Tuesday, Trump was already brimming with excitement.
The French president, who happens to be a very nice man, invited me to dinner at Versailles. And Versailles is not a gold leaf. Versailles is the real deal. And I said, I'd like to do it.
It's a deliberate effort by French President Emmanuel Macron to get back into Trump's good graces.
Bienvenue au président.
He hopes that over dinner, the two can forget US-French tensions and insults exchanged over the past months. Like here, when Trump imitated Macron crying over tariffs.
Whatever you want, Donald, please. Don't tell the population. Please, Donald, I beg you.
Will Trump be served French wine and champagne? Products he once again threatened with tariffs this week. So far, no details of the menu have been leaked.
Well, to talk a bit about that glitzy Palace of Versailles dinner, Mark Perelman, our French politics editor, with me. Mark, what do you make of all this then? Is the French president going too far out of his way to woo and impress Donald Trump?
Well, that's what his opposition here is saying, that there's no reason whatsoever to have this dinner at Versailles for a president who is ignoring international law, is starting wars, and is criticizing overtly France and Europe, threatening to invade Greenland, pulling out troops under the umbrella of NATO on a whim. And they're asking themselves, well, Macron tried this the first time around during Donald Trump's first mandate. We all remember that he was invited to the Bastille Day military parade, and Trump was so impressed that he wanted to have the same parade in the U.S. It didn't pan out in the end. And he was also invited with his wife Melania to a dinner on the Eiffel Tower, which he said was very impressive. So Macron did already try to seduce Trump by making him see the nicest things you can see in Paris. Versailles was the missing piece. Obviously, Versailles has another kind of symbol because it's where the kings used to stay, and that would obviously appeal to Donald Trump. I think Emmanuel Macron knows that Donald Trump will say very nice words, like he's been saying in the past few days, because he's in a good mood, because he thinks he ended the war in Iran by a win, and he's been quite nice. But obviously he knows that next week things are going to change again, that Trump is going to lash out at France and Europe. So many people are wondering, why did you do this? The French president is saying, we do need the Americans. They're the elephant in the room. We cannot ignore them, especially, first of all, to bring peace and quiet in the Strait of Hormuz, but also now try to find a solution in Ukraine, because clearly, as he admitted himself, Trump has been distracted by Iran, and so the willingness of the French president is really to try to concentrate Donald Trump's mind on finding a solution to the war in Ukraine that's been going on for so long. The American president said he would do so, but again, he speaks a lot all the time and doesn't always fulfill his promises.
And we're looking at the pictures now as you're talking from 2017 when Donald Trump was here before during the Bastille Day parade that he was apparently so impressed by. Look, you touched on this already, but if you zoom out a little bit just from this G7, where, as you say, Trump appears to be in a relatively buoyant mood, how would you characterize the relationship between this French administration and the White House? Because obviously Trump has been pretty vocal in his criticism of Emmanuel Macron. He's said on Truth Social a while ago, Emmanuel, he didn't even use his surname, Emmanuel always gets things wrong. He claimed that the president's wife treats him really badly. So he's been publicly not very nice about the French president, despite all this wooing. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, clearly, you could argue that Emmanuel Macron has not been the sole target of Trump's criticism or irony. Trump has had his problems with Keir Starmer, clearly saying, our historical ally is not behaving. They don't have a leader that's up to the task. You could add Chancellor Merz in Germany, who had he criticized the war in Iran, saying, the U.S. has no strategy. And then Trump lashed out, said he would pull out the troops I mentioned earlier. Even his ally, Giorgia Meloni, who did everything in her power to please Trump, they are also ideologically more or less on the same page, had a falling out when he criticized the Pope. Which she said was unacceptable. So obviously the relationship has been extremely bumpy, and the Europeans, the French, are feeling that this will never be fully repaired, from tariffs to Greenland, as I mentioned earlier, even on Ukraine, on NATO. Clearly, there are many differences, and they're seeing Trump behave rather nicely with Xi Jinping, trying to be polite, going there, not making a fuss, and they compare it to the treatment they're getting. Clearly, if they don't read the writing on the wall, Trump makes it pretty obvious that they cannot fully count on the United States. Maybe Trump will be gone in a few years, and this will be seen as an accident, like after his first mandate when Biden came back and the Europeans thought it would be back to normal. But there's no guarantee, of course, and the Europeans realize that they need to take matters into their own hands, militarily, ideologically, economically, because the world has changed. Donald Trump maybe brought it to their conscience in a rather crude and rude way, but clearly in French diplomatic circles, the idea is now, okay, we're surrounded by carnivores. We're the only ones behaving rather nicely, respecting the commercial international rules, international law. Well, maybe we're being too naive. Let's see if this will mean something concretely in the years to come. But clearly, all the alarm bells have been ringing in Europe. Donald Trump may help Europe get its act together until he leaves the White House. We're probably going to hear other criticism of all the other European leaders who will be forced to accept it, even though they might not like it.